Quidditch. Chapter 11. As they entered November, the weather turned very cold, and the mountain around the school became icy gray, and the lake that chilled steel. Every morning the ground was covered in frost. Hagrid could be seen from the upstairs windows defrosting broomsticks on the Quidditch field, bundled up in a moleskin overcoat, rabbit fur gloves, and an enormous beaverskin boots. The Quidditch season had begun. On Saturday, Harry would be playing his first match after weeks of training. Gryffindor versus Slytherin. If Gryffindor won, they would move up into second place at the House Championship. Hardly anyone had seen Harry play because Wood had decided that as their secret weapon. Harry should be kept well secret, but the news that he was playing a seeker had leaked out somehow, and Harry didn't know which was worse, the people telling him he'd be brilliant, or the people telling him he'd be running around underneath him, holding a mattress. It was really lucky that Harry now had Hermione as a friend. He didn't know how he'd have gotten through all this homework without her. With all the last-minute Quidditch practice Wood was making them do, she had also lent him Quidditch Through the Ages, which turned out to be a very interesting read. Harry learned that there were 700 ways to committing a Quidditch foul, and that all of them had happened during a World Cup match in 1473, and that Seekers were usually the smallest and fastest players, and that most serious Quidditch accidents seemed to happen to them. And although people rarely died playing Quidditch, referees had been known to vanish and then turn up some months later in the Sahara Desert. Hermione had become a bit more relaxed about breaking rules, which since Harry and Ron had saved her from the mountain troll, and she was much nicer for it. The day before Harry's first Quidditch match, the three of them were out in the freezing courtyard during break, and she had conjured them up a bright blue fire that could be carried around in a jam jar. They were standing with their backs to it, getting warm, when Snape crossed the yard. Harry noticed it at once that Snape was limping. Harry and Ron and Hermione moved closer together to block the fire from view. They were sure it wouldn't be allowed. Unfortunately, something about their guilty faces caught Snape's eye. He limped over. He hadn't seen the fire, but he seemed to be looking for a reason to tell them off anyways. "What's that you got there, Potter?" "It's Quidditch Through the Ages," Harry showed him. "Library books are not to be taken outside of school," said Snape. "Give it to me. 5 points from Gryffindor." "He just made that rule up," Harry muttered angrily as Snape limped away, wondering what's wrong with his leg. "Dunno, but I hope it really hurt him," said Ron bitterly. The Gryffindor common room was very noisy that evening. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat together next to a window. Hermione was checking Harry and Ron's chums' homework before them. She would never let them copy. How would you ever learn? But by asking her to read through it, they got the right answers anyway. Harry felt restless. He wanted Quidditch Through the Ages back. He had taken his mind off the nerves about tomorrow. Why should he be afraid of Snape? Getting up, he told Ron and Hermione he was going to ask Snape for it if he could have it. "Better you than me," they said together, but Harry had an idea that Snape would refuse it if there were other teachers listening. He made his way down to the staff room and knocked. There was no answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Perhaps Snape had left the book in there. It was worth a try. He rushed the door ajar and peered inside, and a horrible scene met his eyes. Snape and Filch were inside alone. Snape was holding his robes above his knees. One of his legs was bloody and mangled. Filch was handing Snape bandages. "Blasted thing," Snape said. "How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all three heads at once?" Harry tried to shut the door quietly, but "Potter!" Snape's face was twisted with fury as he dropped his robe quickly and to hide his leg. Harry gulped. "I just wonder if I could have my book back." "Get out! Out!" Harry left before Snape could take any more points away from Gryffindor. He sprinted back upstairs. "Did you get it?" Ron asked Harry as he joined them. What's the matter? In a low whisper, Harry told them what he'd seen. You know what that means? He finished breathlessly. He tried to get past the three-headed dog at Halloween. That's what he was going when he saw him. He's after whatever they're guarding, and I'll bet my broomstick he let that troll in to make a diversion. Hermione's eyes were wide. No, he wouldn't, she said. I know he's not very nice, but he wouldn't try to steal something that Dumbledore was keeping safe. Honestly, Hermione, you think that all teachers are saints or something, snapped Ron. I'm with Harry. I wouldn't put anything past Snape. But what's he after? What's that dog guarding? Harry went to bed with his head buzzing with the same question. Neville was snoring loudly, but Harry couldn't sleep. He tried to empty his mind. He needed to sleep. He had to. He had his first Quidditch match in a few hours. But the expression on Snape's face when Harry had seen his leg was not easy to forget. The next morning dawned very bright and cold. A great hall was full of delicious smell of fried sausages and cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to a good Quidditch match. You've got to eat some breakfast. I don't want anything. Just a bit of toast, wailed Hermione. I'm not hungry. Harry felt terrible. In an hour's time, he'd be walking onto the field. Harry, you need your strength, said Miss Finnegan. Seekers are always the ones to get clobbered by the other teams. Thanks, Seamus, said Harry, watching Seamus pile ketchup onto his sausages. By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be going out to the stands to watch the Quidditch pitch. Many students had binoculars and seats that might be raised high into the air, but it was still difficult to see what was going on sometimes. Ron and Hermione joined Neville, Seamus, and Dean, and on the West Ham fan up on the top now. As a surprise for Harry, they had painted a large banner with the sheets Scabbers had ruined. It said Potter for President by Dean. He was good at drawing. He had done large Gryffindor lion underneath. When Hermione had performed a trick, a little charm so that the paint would flash different colors. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Harry and the rest of the team were changing into their scarlet Quidditch robes. Slytherin would be playing in green. Wood cleared his throat for silence. Okay, men, he said, and women, as Chaser Angelina Johnson, and women, Wood agreed. That is it. This is the big one, said Fred Weasley. The one we're all been waiting for, said George. We now know Oliver's speech by heart, Fred told Harry. We were on the team last year. Shut up, you two, said Wood. This is the best team Gryffindor's had in years. We're going to win, I know it. He glared at all of them and said, or else. Right, it's time. Good luck, all of you. Harry followed Fred George out the locker room and hoping that his knees were going to give away. He walked onto the field with loud cheers. Madam Hooch was refereeing, and she stood in the middle of the field, waiting for the two teams, her broom in her hand. Now I want to see a nice fair game, all of you, she said, once they were all gathered around her. Harry noticed that she seemed to be speaking particularly to the Slytherin captain, Marcus Flint, a fifth year. Harry thought Flint looked as if he had some troll blood on him. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the fluttering banner high above, flashing Potter for President over the crowd. His heart skipped. He felt braver. Mount your brooms, please. Harry clambered onto his Nimbus 2000. Madam Hooch gave a loud blast of the silver whistle. 15 brooms rose up high into the air, and they were off. And the quaffle is taken immediately by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor. What an excellent chaser that girl is, and rather attractive, too. Jordan! Sorry, Professor. The Weasley twins, friends of Lee Jordan, were doing the commentators for the match, closely watching Professor McGonagall. And she's really belting it along up there. Neat pass to Alicia Spinnet. A good find for Oliver Woods last year. Only a reserve. Back to Jansen, and then no, to Slytherin. Oh, they have taken the quaffle. Slytherin captain Marcus Flint gains the quaffle. Off he goes. Flint flying like an eagle up there. He's going to see. Nope. Stopped by the excellent move by Gryffindor keeper Wood. And the Gryffindor takes the quaffle. That's Chaser Katie Bell of Gryffindor there. Nice dive around Flint and out the field. Ouch! That must have hurt. Hit in the back of the head with a bludger. Quaffle taken by Slytherin, and the Adrian Percy speeding off towards the goalpost, but he's blocked by second bludger. Second, this way, by Fred and Weasley, can't tell which. Nice play, Gryffindor beat us. Anyway, and Johnson back to possession to the quaffle. And clear the field ahead. Off she goes. She's really flying, dodges, speeding past the bludger. The goalposts are ahead. Come on now, Angelina. Keepers. Belchy dives, misses. Gryffindor scores! Gryffindor cheers filled the air with howls and moans from Slytherin. Budge up there. Moving along, Hagrid. Ron and Hermione squeezed together to give Hagrid enough space to join. Been watching from my hut. Hagrid patting the large pair of binoculars around his neck. But it isn't the same as being in the crowd. No sign of the snitch yet, eh? Nope, said Ron. Harry hasn't had much to do yet. Kept out of trouble, though? That's something, said Hagrid, raising his binoculars, peering skyward with the speck that was Harry. Way up behind them, Harry was gliding over the game, squinting around, looking for the sign of the snitch. This was part of his and Wood's game plan. Keep out of the way until you catch sight of the snitch. Wood had said, "We don't want you attacked before you have to be." When Angelina had scored, Harry had done a couple of loop-de-loops in the air and left off his feelings, but he was back to staring around for the snitch. Once he caught sight of the flash of gold, but it was just a reflection from one of the Weasleys' wristwatches. And once a bludger decided to come pelting his way more like a cannonball than anything, but Harry dodged it and Fred Weasley came chasing after it. "All right there, Harry!" he had time to yell as he beat the bludger furiously towards Marcus Flint. "Slytherin in possession," Lee Jordan was saying. "Chaser, Percy ducks, 2 bludgers, 2 Weasleys, the chaser ball, and the speeds towards the— Wait a moment. What's that? Is that the snitch?" A murmur ran through the crowd. Adrian Percy dropped the quaffle too busy to look over his shoulder at the flash of gold that had passed past his left ear. Harry saw it, and in a great rush of excitement he delivered it downward. After the track of gold, the Slytherin seeker Terence Higgs had his eye on it too. Neck and neck they hurled towards the snitch. All chasers seemed to be forgetting what they were supposed to be doing, and they hung in the midair to watch. Harry was faster than Higgs. He could see the little round ball, the wings fluttering and darting ahead. He put his on extra spurt of speed. Wham! A roar of rage echoed from the Gryffindor below. Marcus Flint had blocked Harry on purpose, and Harry's broom spun off course. Harry holding on for dear life. "Foul!" screamed Gryffindors. Madam Hooch spoke angrily to Flint, and then ordered a free shot from the goalpost for Gryffindor. But in the confusion, of course, the golden snitch had disappeared from sight again. Down in the stands, Dean Thomas was yelling, "Send him off! Red card!" "What are they talking about, Dean?" said Ron. "Red card!" said Dean furiously. "In soccer, you get thrown out a red card when you get out of the game." "But this isn't soccer, Dean," Ron reminded him. Hagrid, however, was on Dean's side. "They ought to change the rules. Flint could have knocked Harry out of the air." Lee Jordan finding it difficult not to take sides. "So, after that obvious, disgusting bit of cheating, Jordan," scowled Professor McGonagall. "I mean, after that open and revolting foul, Jordan, I'm warning you." All right. Flint nearly kills a Gryffindor seeker, which could happen to anyone, I'm sure. So a penalty to Gryffindor, taken by Splinter, who puts it away. No trouble. And we continue to play. Gryffindor is still in possession. It was Harry dodged another bludger. It was spinning dangerously past his head that it happened, when his broom gave a sudden, frightening lurch. For a second, he thought he was going to fall. He gripped the brooms tightly with both hands and knees. He'd never felt anything like it before. It happened again. It was as though the broom was trying to buck him off. But the Nimbus 2000 did not suddenly decide to buck the riders off. Harry tried to turn back towards Gryffindor's goalposts. He had half a mind to ask Wood to call time out, and they realized that his broom was completely out of control. Couldn't turn it. He couldn't direct it at all. It was zigzagging through the air, and everyone was now making violent swishing moves, almost unseating him. Lee was commentating. Slytherin is in possession. Flint and Quaffle passes. Spin it. Balls pass. Hit hard in the face by a bludger. Hope it broke his nose. Only joking, Professor. Slytherin scores. Oh no. The Slytherins were cheering. No one seemed to have noticed that Harry's broom was behaving strangely. It was carrying him slowly higher, away from the game, jerking and twitching as it went. Dunno what Harry's think he's doing, Hagrid mumbled, and stared through the binoculars. If I didn't know better, I'd say he'd lost control of his broom, but he can't have. Suddenly, people were pointing at Harry all over the stands. His broom had been started to roll and roll over and over with him on it, managing to hold on. The whole crowd gasped. Harry's broom had given him a wild jerk. Harry swung off it. He was now hanging from it, holding on with one hand. Did something happen to it when the Flint blocked him? Seamus whispered. Couldn't have. Or can't have, Hagrid said, in a voice shaking. Can't be nothing to interfere with a broom except powerful dark magic. No kid could do that with Nimbus 2000. At those words, Hermione seized Hagrid's binoculars, but instead of looking up at Harry, she started looking frantically at the crowd. What are you doing? Moaned Ron, Greyface. I knew it! Hermione gasped. Snape, look! Ron grabbed the binoculars. Snape, in the middle of the stands, opposite him, had his eyes fixed on Harry and was monitoring nonstop under his breath. He's doing something. He's jinxing his broom, said Hermione. Should we do? Leave it to me. Before Ron could say another word, Hermione disappeared. Ron turned the binoculars back on Harry. His broom was violently vibrating so hard it was almost impossible for him to hang on much longer. The whole crowd was on their feet, watching, terrified. Weasleys flew up to try to pull Harry safely onto the broom, but it was no good. Every time they got near him, the broom would jump higher still. They dropped lower beneath him, obviously hoping to catch him if he fell. Marcus Flint seized the quaffle and scored 5 times without anyone noticing. Come on, Hermione, Ron muttered desperately. Hermione fought her way through the stands where Snape stood, and now he was racing along the row behind him. She didn't even stop to say sorry when she knocked Professor Quirrell's head first row in front. Reaching Snape, she crouched down, pulled out her wand, and whispered a few well-chosen words. Bright blue flames shot from her wand onto the hem of Snape's robes. It took perhaps 30 seconds for Snape to realize that he was on fire. Suddenly, a yelp told her that she had done her job. Scooping the fire off him into the little jar of her pocket, she scampered back along the row. Snape would never know what happened. It was enough, though. Up in the air, Harry was suddenly able to clamber back on his broom. Neville, you can look now, Ron said. Neville has been sobbing in Hagrid's jacket for the last 5 minutes. Harry was speeding towards the ground when the crowd saw him clap his hand over his mouth as he was about to be sick. He hit the field on all fours, coughed. Something gold fell into his hand. I've got the snitch, he shouted, waving it above his head, and the game ended. Complete confusion. He didn't catch it. He nearly swallowed it, Flint still howling 20 minutes later. But it made no difference. Harry hadn't broken any rules. Lee Jordan was still happily shouting at the results, and Gryffindor had won by 170 points to 60. Harry heard none of this, though he was being made a cup of strong tea in Hagrid's hut with Ron and Hermione. It was Snape, Ron said, explaining. Hermione saw him. He was cursing your broom, muttering he wouldn't take his eyes off you. Rubbish, said Hagrid, who hadn't heard a word of what they had gone on next to him in the stands. Why would Snape do something like that? Harry and Ron and Hermione looked at one another, wondering what to tell him. Harry decided the truth. I found something out about him, he told Hagrid. He tried to get past the three-headed dog on Halloween. It bit him. We think he was trying to steal the whatever's garden. Hagrid dropped his teapot. How do you know about Fluffy? Fluffy? Yeah, he's mine. I bought him off a Greek chappie. I met him in the pub last year. I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the... Yes, said Harry eagerly. Now don't you ask me any more, Hagrid said gruffly. That's top secret, eh? That is. But Snape's trying to steal it? Rubbish, said Hagrid again. Snape's at Hogwarts, teacher. He'd never do nothing of the sort. So why did he try to kill Harry? Cried Hermione. The afternoon's events certainly seem to have changed their mind about Snape. I know a jinx when I see one, Hagrid. I've read all about them. You've got to keep an eye contact on Snape. Was not blinking at all. I saw him. I'm telling you, you're wrong, Hagrid said hotly. I don't know why Harry's broom was acting like that, but Snape wouldn't try and kill a student. Now listen to me, the three of you. You're meddling in things that don't concern you. It's dangerous. And forget that dog, and forget the garden, and between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Ah, said Harry. So there's someone called Nicholas Flamel involved, is there? Hagrid looked furious with himself.